Imagine waking up tomorrow with no phone, no GPS, no compass, no signs, no roads. You're standing in a forest you've never seen before. The sun is somewhere behind the clouds. Every tree looks exactly like the last one. And somewhere, 30 miles away, is the only place on Earth that can keep you alive. You have no idea which direction it's in. Now here's the question that should terrify you. How would you find your way back? Not in 100 years, not with satellites. Right now, with nothing but your eyes, your feet, and your fear. Because for over 95% of human history, this wasn't a thought experiment. This was Tuesday.
Most people assume early humans just wandered, that they walked around, vaguely followed rivers, and hoped for the best. That sounds reasonable, until you actually think about what getting lost meant 60,000 years ago. Today, getting lost means checking your phone. Back then, getting lost meant dying. Not eventually, not poetically, actually dying. Of thirst, of cold, of a predator that had been tracking you for the last 2 hours without you knowing. There were no road signs, no maps, no names for mountains, no coordinates, no paper. And yet, early humans didn't just survive in one location. They crossed entire continents. They walked out of Africa and reached Australia by boat across open ocean with no visible land in front of them. Let that sink in for a second. They looked at the horizon, saw nothing but water, and decided to keep going anyway. How? How do you cross an ocean you can't see the end of, with no instruments, and somehow end up exactly where you meant to go? This is where the story gets strange, because the answer isn't they got lucky. The answer is that early humans built something far more sophisticated than a map. They built it inside their own minds.
Here's an uncomfortable truth. If you were dropped into an unfamiliar forest right now, your brain would immediately start making a map. Not a real one, a fake one. Psychologists call it a cognitive map, an internal, constantly updating model of space, built from memory, movement, and pattern. The problem is, this system is easy to fool. Walk in a straight line through dense fog, blindfolded with no reference points, and you won't walk straight. You'll walk in a circle every single time. Scientists tested this. People asked to walk straight through a featureless environment ended up looping back to where they started without realizing it again and again. Which means the very tool your brain uses to navigate, the tool ancient humans depended on for their lives, is also the tool most likely to betray you the moment you lose your reference points. So if early humans couldn't just trust their gut, what did they actually use instead? This is where it gets interesting, because they didn't rely on one method. They stacked several, deliberately, instinctively, and with terrifying precision.
Before there were maps drawn on stone or bark, there was one map that never moved, never lied, and was visible from anywhere on Earth. The sky. The sun rises in the east and sets in the west. Simple enough. But here's what most people don't realize. Early humans didn't just glance at the sun. They tracked its arc, the angle, the speed, the shadows it cast. A stick in the ground and the shifting shadow around it was enough to build a directional system accurate to within a few degrees. At night, it got even more precise. The stars don't just twinkle beautifully, they rotate around a fixed point. In the northern hemisphere, that point sits almost exactly above the North Star. Ancient Polynesian navigators, some of the most advanced wayfinders in human history, memorized the rising and setting points of over 200 stars. Not roughly, precisely. They knew which star rose exactly where the island of Tahiti sat on the horizon. They knew which star marked Hawaii. They built an invisible star map stretching across thousands of miles of open Pacific Ocean and carried the entire thing in their memory. No compass, no instruments, just decades of obsessive pattern recognition, passed from elder to child, generation after generation. But here's the twist. The sky isn't always available. Clouds roll in, storms hit, fog swallows the horizon. So what happens when the only map you have disappears?
This is where most people assume the story ends. No stars, no sun, no direction, game over. But ancient navigators had already solved this problem, and the solution is almost unbelievable. They read the ocean itself. Not the waves you can see, the ones you can feel. Polynesian navigators developed the ability to detect long, deep ocean swells, massive, slow-moving patterns created by distant weather systems thousands of miles away, simply by lying down in the bottom of the canoe and feeling how the hull rocked beneath them. These swells move in consistent directions for weeks at a time. By memorizing the rhythm of the swell against their own body, navigators could hold a bearing through total darkness, through fog, through storms, without seeing a single star. Some could distinguish up to 4 or 5 different swell patterns crossing beneath the same canoe at once and use the interference between them to correct their course. Think about that. They were reading the ocean the way you might read a page of text, except the letters were in visible motion, felt through their own spine, memorized since childhood. And the ocean wasn't their only hidden signal. Birds gave them away too. Certain seabirds fly out to sea in the morning to fish and return to land every single evening. Spot the right species at the right time of day, and you've just found a shortcut to shore that no map could give you. Cloud formations behave differently over land than over open water. Land heats up faster, creating a very specific type of cloud buildup visible from dozens of miles away. Even the color of the water changes near a reef, long before land is visible. One by one, these signals stacked into something remarkable. Not luck, not guessing. A complete environmental instrument, assembled entirely from attention. But wingspan and starlight only get you so far. What happened when humans needed to travel inland, through forests, deserts, and mountains where none of these signals existed? That's a completely different survival problem.
A forest doesn't look the same to someone who's never seen it and someone who has walked through it 100 times. To you, every tree looks identical. To someone raised in that landscape, every tree is different. This one leans slightly east. That one has a scar from a lightning strike 3 decades ago. That rock formation only appears from this exact angle. Indigenous trackers across the world, in Australia, the Kalahari, the Amazon, the Arctic, developed what researchers now call songlines and memory maps, entire mental libraries of terrain encoded not as pictures, but as stories. In Aboriginal Australian culture, songlines were oral maps disguised as songs and legends, a specific sequence of landmarks encoded into rhythm and lyrics that could guide a person across thousands of kilometers of desert with pinpoint accuracy. Walk while singing the song, and the song itself tells you when to turn, where the next water source is, and how far you still have to go. Lose the words, and you lose the map. This wasn't poetry for its own sake. This was survival information, made unforgettable by turning it into art. And it reveals something profound about the human brain. We are not naturally good at memorizing lists of facts, but we are extraordinarily good at memorizing stories. So ancient humans didn't fight their own psychology, they exploited it. They turned the landscape itself into a narrative because a narrative is nearly impossible to forget. But even the most detailed mental map has one fatal weakness. What happens when you're the first person to ever cross that land? No songs exist yet, no elder has walked this path, no story has been written. You are quite literally mapping the unknown in real time with your life on the line. How do you even begin?
At some point, someone did something that changed everything. They stopped relying purely on memory, and they made a mark. A pile of stones at a fork in a trail, a notch cut into a tree, a specific arrangement of rocks pointing toward water. This is the exact moment human navigation stopped being purely biological and started becoming technological. Because a memory dies with the person who holds it. A mark on a tree does not. Archaeologists have found cave engravings dating back over 14,000 years that appear to represent local landscapes, rivers, mountain ranges, and hunting territories carved directly into stone. One of the oldest known examples, found in Spain, appears to show a topographic layout of the surrounding valley, complete with what may be river systems and elevation changes. This wasn't decoration. This was the earliest known attempt to freeze a mental map into something permanent, something that could outlive its creator and be passed to someone who had never even seen the land themselves. For the first time in human history, someone who had never set foot in a valley could look at a symbol and understand where danger was, where food was, and where home was. That is an almost unbelievable leap, because it means navigation stopped being a skill and started becoming shared knowledge. And once knowledge can be shared, something extraordinary happens. It compounds.
You'd think solving navigation would end the danger. It didn't. It just changed the danger. Because the moment humans began trading knowledge instead of just surviving alone, a brutal new problem appeared. What happens when the map is wrong? Early traders who ventured beyond their own territory were now trusting symbols made by strangers, symbols they couldn't verify for lands they'd never seen. One mistaken symbol, one exaggerated claim about a water source that didn't exist, one forgotten seasonal river that dries up in summer, and an entire group could walk confidently into their own deaths. This is the hidden cost of every map ever made. A map isn't just information, it's trust frozen into a shape, and trusting the wrong shape has killed more people throughout history than getting lost with no map at all, which raises an unsettling question that connects directly to how you live today.
Here's the part that should make you sit up. You still have this exact instinct. Right now, without a forest, without a canoe, without a single star in the sky, your brain is still building a version of that ancient survival map every single day. Except now, the terrain isn't a jungle. It's your relationships, your career, your reputation, your sense of what's safe and what isn't. You still use landmarks, just different ones. A familiar coffee shop, a regular route to work, a person you trust because you've mapped them as safe over years of interaction. You still read invisible signals, a tone of voice, a hesitation, a slight change in body language, the same way ancient navigators read ocean swells no one else could feel. And you still pass down songlines, except now we call them advice, warnings, family stories, and don't go there, that place isn't safe. The instinct never disappeared, it just changed its terrain. Every human alive today is still running the same ancient software our ancestors used to survive oceans, deserts, and forests with no name. We just don't notice it because we no longer call it survival. We call it instinct, or gut feeling, or just knowing. But it's the same system, the same one that got a canoe across the Pacific Ocean with 0 instruments, the same one that turned a random forest into a mental map indistinguishable from memory itself.
So let's go back to the beginning. You, standing in an unfamiliar forest. No phone, no map, no idea which direction leads home. It feels impossible. But now you know the truth. You were never actually mapless. You had the sun, you had the stars, you had shadows, wind direction, animal behavior, water patterns, and a brain specifically evolved over hundreds of thousands of years to notice all of it without being told to. Ancient humans didn't conquer the unknown because they had better tools. They conquered it because they refused to see empty space as empty. Every tree had a story, every wave had a rhythm, every star had a name and a purpose. The world was never blank, it was always speaking. They just learned to listen. Maps didn't create human navigation created maps. Long before ink ever touched paper, the greatest map in history was already finished, carved not into stone, but into instinct, memory, and story, passed from one mind to another across thousands of generations. And somewhere inside you, right now, that same ancient map is still running. You were never lost. You were just never taught how to read what you already know.